students of higher education, most of us have encountered some sort of like physical science class, or science class has discussed the topic of climate change and has discussed that Earth goes through climate change. It's a natural process, and that right now we are going through what is known as global warming. And well, there's a lot of controversy about global warming because climate change is natural, and people are not sure if global warming right now is made from natural processes or man-made processes. And taken from the Gallup poll in 2010, 50% of people believed it was man-made, whereas 46% believed it was natural causes. And that's a pretty great divide about such an important topic that is infecting our environment and world. But in 2013, it has evened out a bit. 57% now believe it is man-made, and 39% believe it's from natural causes. And people are skeptical about this fact because, as I said, well, climate change is natural, and there's a lot of evidence that it is natural. This is taken from the Natural History Museum. In the Cretaceous period, which was about 100 million years ago, our environment from Alaska to Antarctica was a subtropical world. And right now, it was about 6 to 8 degrees hotter, and there's 5 times as much CO2 in the atmosphere. But in contrast, we have also had ice ages. And this is seen in Britain, where there's woolly mammoth skeletons and glacial formations. If you think about it, climate change is kind of like an ebb and flow. It rises and it peaks and it flows and it goes down and peaks. And there's also been a rapid climate change in the past, and this is why people are skeptical. It is called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, and this was 55 million years ago. And at this time, the temperature rose 6 degrees Celsius in 20,000 years. And that's a pretty good amount of temperature. And there are also other natural factors that do affect climate change, such as sunspots and solar flares, which releases heat and energy towards our planet. And also our planet, the orbit can change, and it also kind of wobbles on its tilt, you know? Yeah. But even though there is strong evidence in the past that climate change is natural, this is not the case in global warming. Global warming is an increase in temperature that is primarily caused by man-made processes. And to know this, you kind of have to know the difference between climate change and global warming. Climate change is the difference of temperature, precipitation, humidity, and weather in a long period of time, whereas global warming is a change in temperature in a short period of time, right? So the definition of global warming is: global warming is a phenomenon in which gradual increase of Earth's temperature is generally attributed to increase of greenhouse gases such as CO2, methane, and other pollutants. And there's a lot of evidence that it is from these gases, such as for previous 650,000 years, the CO2 emissions have never gone over 300 parts per million, whereas beginning 1950s, it broke 300 parts per million, and as of January, is now 396.81 parts per million, which is very, very high if you think that rose in only 60 years, whereas 650,000 years ago, it was below 300 parts per million. And not only that, methane has increased quite a bit, and we know that CO2 emissions are from man because it started in industrial age, where we started combusting CO2 from fossil fuels for electricity, transportation, and industry. And methane increase came from fracking, which we use to get natural gases from the Earth. And all these gases that come and hit the ozone is called the greenhouse effect, which causes temperature to rise. And we know that this is mainly man-made because as of, I believe, January, it rose in the past 100 years 1.4 Fahrenheit, which is 0.77 degrees Celsius. And you think that's not a lot because the human lifespan is pretty short. But you think one of the largest increases in the past was 6 Celsius in 20,000 years, where this is 0.7 Celsius, 0.77 Celsius in 100 years. That's quite amount of short time. And many organizations also agree that global warming is man-made. From the American Association of Advancement Science, the scientific evidence is clear. Global climate change is caused by human activities, is occurring now, and is a growing threat to our society. So in conclusion, even though Earth's past climate change has been natural, this is not the case anymore. Global warming is caused by man. We cannot blame it on the past just because there is evidence that it was natural. All these CO2 emissions and methane emissions is causing our planet's temperature to rise, and that is why global warming is made from man.
Right on the time.
All right, I always like to start with the strong things in the speech, although I should probably end with the strong things in the speech, then maybe people would remember it. They only remember the nasty things I say. But I like to start with the strong things so that you know that I was listening, and I did think that you did a good job on some things. I thought you did an excellent job explaining why there's a controversy, why we have to talk about this, that people have their doubts about whether or not it's man-made, that there's an historical context that raises their suspicions, that makes them doubt those kinds of things, and I thought you did a good job on that. I think it does take you almost 3 minutes to get to the claim that you're making. So you've got a lot of background that you're giving us. When you get to the claim, it is pretty clear what your point of view is. But it does take a long time to get to that claim. So, you know, that's kind of a double-edged sword on that one. I thought that you did a pretty good job presenting information. You need to cite the sources of that information more consistently. A lot of it is probably, you know, basic factual data, and if it's a summary of our information that you even got from your textbook, that would be fine. Tell us that you got it from the textbook, but you're giving us a history lesson. Just as an example, we've got this information about the 300 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere versus to what it is today, and I'm going, and where did that information come from? I know that you got it from someplace, but I don't know where, just having listened to the speech. So you need to kind of give those source citations during the presentation. There's not really a structure to the speech per se, except that at the beginning we have an explanation of what's going on, and then a general argument that it has to be human-caused. It was a little inconsistent to me at one point that you gave a definition that says, well, there's a difference between climate change and global warming is a thing that's caused by the CO2 in the atmosphere, and then the one clear piece of evidence, testimony evidence that you give at the end says that the problem is that human activity is causing climate change. I'm going, well, wait a second. I thought climate change was the other thing. Now it's a little bit confusing, and so there's some inconsistency on that. I thought you do a nice job speaking to the audience. It's easy to hear you. You're talking naturally, which is a good thing. And you finished at the right point, so everything was planned out, obviously, but you need to get the structure clear, and you need to cite the evidence more effectively. All right, thank you.